The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I'm in my 8th year working alongside Bob to originate our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I am joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. And then there were 8.
Yeah, we are down to the best teams in the NFL for the divisional round. We've got the Bills and Ravens, which is going to be an incredible game. My Chiefs finally back in action. Feels like I haven't watched them play in forever. But let's start here in Detroit with the free bet of the week. And you're 19, 11, and 1 on podcast sites and totals dating back to last year. But what do you want to go with in this game?
Okay, free bet of the week here is going to be the over in Commanders Lions, over 55.5. And, totals here in the mid 50s don't come around too often, but given the perfect scoring conditions in the Dome combined with, Detroit's massive advantage versus this Washington's defense, the betting market to make this total, what I would say as low as 55.5 is implying that the Lions have an average defense here, which I just don't think I can accept.
Yeah, maybe limiting the Vikings offense in week 18 is making them overrated. I mean, Detroit surrendered 5.8 yards per play this season, which was 28th in the NFL.
Yeah, 28th. So it's crazy that the market is valuing them as an average defense. And those 5.8 yards per play that they surrendered includes the 5 games and 7.5 sacks they got from Aiden Hutchinson, who will obviously not be on the field. The 5.8 yards per play includes the 45 pressures they got from interior defender Aleem McNeil, who was ranked 8th in pressures among interior defenders when he got knocked out in week 15, and he's, tore his ACL. He's out again for this game. And the 5.8 yards per play includes the 13 starts they got from Carlton Davis, who is way better. He was the best cornerback for the Lions this year, ranked 19th in PFF coverage grade. So, the defense is worse than they have shown this entire season, and yet the market, I think, is rating them too high here. We have the Lions ranked as our 22nd best defense, and that's in a situation neutral. So obviously this game will be played in a dome here. And I just think it's pretty unlikely that the Lions limit the Commanders to under 24 points here. Washington averaged 28 points per game. They were 5th in success rate this season in scoring conditions that were 1 point worse than average by our metrics, as 3rd worst in the NFL. So I just think, with an offense of this caliber, I'd say, top 5 to 7 offense in a dome against a below average defense, they're going to get to 24 points here.
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders are a scary offense, but where do you think they're going to be able to find success in this game?
Well, with Carlton Davis out, I think they're going to attack Terrion Arnold, who ranks 6th worst in PFF coverage grade this season on those go routes to Terry McLaurin. Jaden Daniels led the NFL, adding 42.5 EPA on go routes this season. And the Lions lead the NFL with a 44% cover 1 rate, but turning your back in man coverage versus Jaden Daniels is a recipe for disaster. Daniels led the NFL with plus 57.5 rush expected points added, and Detroit's defense is surrendering a league high 6.2 yards per carry to opposing quarterbacks. This has been a problem for Aaron Glenn defenses going back years. And that cover 1 leaves an opening for Zach Ertz, who was 4th in success rate among tight ends because Ertz has the 10th highest target difference between man and zone coverage this season.
Well, looking at Detroit, the market is expecting their offense to score 32.5 points in this game. And it sounds like you think this could be a touch low after the Commanders defense just surrendered a 65% dropback success rate last week, which was the worst dropback success rate allowed in a playoff win since 2000.
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders don't have a good defense, and the Lions lead the NFL with a 37% play action rate. The Commanders have been terrible defending play action this year. They're allowing 18% more yards per pass play against play action. Now, what the Commanders have been good at is defending running back screens. So I do not think this is going to be a big Jahmyr Gibbs game. I think Ben Johnson is going to be looking more downfield.
Yeah, and to add to that point, Washington cornerback Marshawn Lattimore might not be fully healthy as he surrendered a league-high 4.4 yards per cover snap in the wildcard round, and it's possible that he is not going to be able to go step for step on those deep balls with Jameson Williams.
I think Jameson could get behind Lattimore in this game just from what we saw last week. And then I also think Goff is going to feature tight end Sam Laporta in the seams. Laporta's 5th in yards per route run this season, and the Commanders' defense is 26th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends. So we think this total should be priced at 58. I think the market might have got there if we didn't see that Week 18 game versus the when Vikings went against the Lions. That closed 56.5 and went under. So now I think the market's a little bit timid here, but I do think that the true price for this game should be 58, the highest price I've put on a total since at least 2020.
Yeah, that is crazy to see a total that high in the NFL. But let's shift it over to our next game preview here. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs -8.5 versus Houston. And this might be the most bet cross-sport teaser of all time with the Chiefs and the Buckeyes. I mean, two teams at -8.5. People are going to be hammering that. But let's look at this game. And CJ Stroud averaged 7.3 yards per pass play last week, good for his 3rd highest of the season. And Stroud generated 79% of his passing yards on in-breaking routes in the wildcard round.
But I don't think Stroud is going to be able to replicate that against the Chiefs, who are allowing the 4th lowest rate of middle passes in the NFL. They can strain that area and take it away. And when opposing quarterbacks do go into the middle of the field, the Chiefs are 6th in EPA per dropback allowed on those passes. And this goes back to what we've been talking about all year on this podcast. Steve Spagnuolo owns that Kyle Shanahan San Francisco scheme. It was going back to the Super Bowl last year. San Francisco's offense was a juggernaut, averaging a league high 51% success rate. They only had a 45% success rate against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Then Clint Kubiak, who was on that staff in the Super Bowl, he went over to New Orleans. He was the offensive coordinator for the Saints this year. Spagnuolo's defense conceded only 13 points and 4.3 yards per play to the Saints with Derek Carr in Week 5. Then Bobby Slowick, he was on the San Francisco staff 2 years ago. The Chiefs played the Texans earlier this season. Houston's offense had just a 37% success rate versus the Chiefs on that Saturday before Christmas. Most of that production was from Tank Dell, who had 98 yards on 7 targets before a season-ending injury a few minutes into the second half. The Texans only had a 30% success rate in the second half against Spagnuolo's defense without Dell. The league average success rate is 44%. So you can see Spagnuolo completely shuts down this type of scheme, and especially without Tank Dell on the field, the Texans are in trouble.
Okay, so we know that he shuts down these schemes, but why does he actually have so much success on it?
Well, I think it comes down to the constraining the middle of the field thing like we talked about, and also Spags play a ton of too high. Kyle Shanahan's schemes are designed to beat single high safety coverages, and the Chiefs have the second highest too high rate in the NFL. CJ Stroud's yards per pass play versus too high this year is just 88% of his yards per pass play against single high. That's 26 relatively in the league.
Yeah, looking back at the Chargers last week, they absolutely preyed on this weak Houston offensive line for a 43% pressure rate on Stroud, including 3 sacks, and Kansas City's defense was 6th in pressure rate, and they might be set to cause even more havoc in the backfield than LA did, considering the Chargers only ranked 19th in pressure rate during the regular season.
And the Chiefs match up better against this offensive line than the Chargers did too. So you watch how much damage the Chargers did last week. I mean, the weakness of this Texans offensive line is the interior. The Chiefs have Chris Jones, who should absolutely wreck this game. And so I think to your point that the Chargers had 3 sacks last week. I would not be surprised if the Chiefs were in the 4 to 5 sack range on Saturday.
Yeah, and looking at Kansas City's secondary, they could be getting a huge upgrade here with cornerback Jalen Watson coming back into the fold. And Watson allowed 0.87 yards per cover snap in his 6 games this season, compared to backups Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams combining to surrender 1.06 yards per cover snap.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad there for the Chiefs defense when Najee came in earlier this year after Watson came out. Josh Williams filled in fine, but I mean, Watson's the guy. And so if he can play this week, that'll be huge. They can use him as a part of double teams to contain Nico Collins, who's 9th in EPA per target this year. If they don't want to do the bracket coverage on Collins, they could just shadow him with Trent McDuffie, who's 5th in PFF coverage grade.
Well, looking at Houston's defense, they pressured Justin Herbert on more than half of his dropbacks last week, and pass protection will certainly be the main concern for this Chiefs offense that doesn't really have a clear answer at left tackle. So what do you think they're going to do there?
Well, there's two options, right? It'll either be DJ Humphries or Joe Tooney. I think I lean it'll be Humphries because Andy Reid will know that maximizes the ceiling for this Chiefs team if he can get back to that Pro Bowl level he was at in Arizona. But Patrick Mahomes may feel a little bit more comfortable with Joe Tooney. He's had twice as many reps at left tackle than Humphries did. And I think, Mahomes just has a lot more familiarity with Joe Tooney. So, if Mahomes is more comfortable with Tooney and they decide to go that route, I could see that, but I lean it will be Humphries. Either way, it will be a problem for Andy Reid to solve this week. They're definitely going to have to do a lot of chipping and quick passes because the Texans' edge rush is so dominant.
Well, another thing to worry about is the Chiefs have not played a competitive football game since securing the top seed in the AFC on Christmas Day. So are you worried about this whole rust versus rest thing?
Well, I think the rest certainly helps them, right? The Chiefs have been injured in the receiving core all year. They're going to be getting all those guys back. We talked about Watson. So they're a much healthier team than they have been all season. Now, I think any rust that Kansas City's offense might have will be neutralized by preparation because you remember Andy Reid is 19-11 against the spread off a bye because he is so good with extra time to prepare. So our model thinks the Chiefs should be a 10-point favorite here with a predicted total of 42.2.
Yeah, I'll be boots on the ground for that one. So excited for that.
Nice.
But let's shift it over. We've got a great game here with the Buffalo Bills, who are home underdogs versus the Ravens. Crazy. But that is after Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson combined for 267 yards on the ground last week. And Baltimore's offense used multiple backs or tight ends on 89% of their snaps versus the Steelers. And it seems like the key to this game will be how the Bills handle the Ravens' heavy personnel.
Yes, and I think it's going to be another huge, heavy personnel game because the Ravens might once again be without Zay Flowers, who's 13th in yards per route run, 0.6 points according to our metrics. That's a big loss for them, and when you're down a wide receiver like that, I think they are going to go heavy. Baltimore's offense had a 75% heavy personnel rate in the regular season game versus Buffalo. I could see that trickling in the 90% area this week if Flowers is not able to suit up because the Bills do not like to put three linebackers on the field. Instead, they prefer to play nickelback Taron Johnson for the majority of the snaps. Buffalo's defense had a league low 4% base personnel rate this season. And even against the Ravens in that regular season game, it was just 25%. Baltimore's offense rushed for 247 yards in that 35-10 victory. Now, it was a tale of two halves. The Bills, they like to play lighter personnel and play too high safeties. The Ravens dominated this with the ground game and with passes to the running backs. Justice Hill and Derrick Henry combined for 9 receptions in that Week 4 game. Now, the Buffalo's defense switched to a more aggressive man coverage defense in the second half, and it proved effective. Baltimore's offense averaged 0.54 EPA per play in the first half versus the Bills compared to negative 0.04 EPA per play in the second half. I expect the Bills to play unconventionally man-heavy defense on Sunday night, something we never really see from the Bills, but I expect a highly unique, tailored game plan here from Sean McDermott.
Yeah, to add to your point, Ravens tight ends Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, as well as Rashad Bateman, all average fewer yards per route run versus man coverage than zone coverage this year. And Baltimore's only receiver that was averaging more yards per route run against man is Zay Flowers, who is likely out with the knee injuries. So let's move over to the Bills offense, though. And they also kind of played bully ball last week.
Yeah, they went with 6 offensive linemen on 22% of snaps against the Broncos. They ran for 210 yards. Now, the Ravens are allowing a league low 32% rush success rate. So I'm expecting Buffalo's approach on offense to be much different this week, relying a lot more on Josh Allen's arm. And I mean, the Ravens pass defense, a lot of the storylines you'll see coming into this game is how much they improved in the second half of the season after they made those changes at safety, moving Kyle Hamilton away from the line of scrimmage and moving him back and then starting Ardarius Washington. But Baltimore has not gone against an offense rated above average by the betting market since their bye week. since before their bye week versus the Bengals on November 7th. The Ravens surrendered 34 points on that day, and it was after they did that safety switch. So I think a lot of this, safety switch talk is actually just attributed to schedule. And, the Bills offense was better than the Bengals offense this year. So I certainly think the Bills have the potential to get into the 30s against this Ravens defense if they air it out against that secondary.
Yeah, this game is going to be absolutely electric, and I cannot wait for it. But we're not going to be discussing the Rams versus Eagles game. And if you want that analysis, head over to drbobsports.com. Our playoff package is $195, and Tanner will also have props for this weekend sent out in the playoff package. But let's move over to college football for our primetime prop. And we are 24-15 on the podcast, dating back to last year. How about our guy, Jaden Blue, scoring twice last week, but still going under his rushing prop, just like you said he would. But what do you want to go with this week, Tan?
All right, for the college national championship, we are going with Mitchell Evans under 33.5 receiving yards. So much of this is going to be similar to last week's analysis because we believe Ohio State's defense is underrated because they've been relatively better against good offenses. In other words, they've been using less sophisticated schemes or just not trying as hard against the cupcakes this year, which is dragging down their overall compensated numbers, but they've been great against the good teams. Oregon, fourth best offense in the country, is the only team to put up more than 17 points on the Buckeyes. And three offenses that are better than Notre Dame did not surpass 17 points. And Notre Dame's offense is overrated anyways because they've had 6 defensive touchdowns this season.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like Notre Dame's going to be in that 14 to 17 point range here.
I think so. And so we need to kind of figure out how we're going to fade this Irish offense with a prop. I'm going to look to Ohio State's best player on defense, safety Caleb Downs.
Yeah, and he's insane. He's not even draft eligible yet, but he's looking like he's going to be a top 10 pick in the 2026 draft, which is just nuts for a safety to even be in that position.
Yes. And so, when you're looking at who Caleb Downs is going to be taking away in this game, I think that brings us to Mitchell Evans, tight end. He's only gone over 33.5 receiving yards in 3 games all season. I certainly do not think he's going to make it a 4th against Caleb Downs in the national championship. So give me under 33.5 receiving yards for Mitchell Evans.
I love it. Our final college football game of the season should be a good one. But if you're looking for more content, make sure to head over to drbobsports.com where you can sign up for the college basketball service as we are right in the middle of conference play. But we'll be back next Friday to preview the AFC and NFC championship.